So now we're back. We've got all of the ribs in place. I went through, cleaned up any globs of glue that might interfere with anything we're going to do. Also added the first two non-laser cut pieces in there. You can see there's two beams that run across that very first rib. We're going to be eventually installing a lot more of those across these as we build up the decks. If you remember in the previous video, there was one these ribs, particularly this one here, the third one in here, that I was having a little trouble with. I tried to pound it down with the hammer, decided, okay, it must be already seated. It wouldn't go down any further. I really didn't like the way it was sitting in there. So I was fortunately able to catch it before the glue completely cured. It was still a big effort to get it back out of there. And sure enough, it had not seated all the way. Was able to file, do a little bit of sanding in there and get it down. So that's a kind of just a good thing to always keep in mind. If something doesn't look right, it probably isn't right. Before you move on, before you reach a point where correcting it is going to be a difficult task, don't be afraid to take something apart and redo it. Fortunately, we are working with wood, which is a fairly forgivable material. If something breaks, things like that, it can be glued together. If I had not caught that till later, it would have been much more difficult to correct, but it still would have been correctable. Right. So the next step that we need to do is start to install the decks. Okay, right now, this ship has multiple decks. This first one isn't really going to be visible when the ship is done. It's going to sit down really low, and it's really in there for stability. As you can see, these pieces will just slot in amongst the ribs. Okay, so pretty easy step to accomplish. Now, I already kind of dry fitted these things, and there's a couple things that I noticed. And one is a fairly common thing when you're working with wood, especially with wood that has been shipped from overseas, things like that, is that it was packaged up in an area that had different humidity levels. And now you get it, put it into your climate. Maybe you have more humidity, maybe you have less humidity. And so what started off as a perfectly flat piece of wood might end up with a little bit of a bend. I'm not sure whether you can see it, but that's a little bit in here. The top is a little higher. That's, the wood warping. You might be able to see me push it down on it. That's a fairly common thing. So as I put these on, I'll put some weights on it, and that will help hold it flat while the glue dries. Another thing I did notice in dry fitting is that despite all of my best efforts, there is a ever so slight bend to this false keel in here. Most of it is up at the bow end, although there's a tiny, tiny amount at the stern end, probably not enough there to worry about. I mean, across the whole keel, there's probably only 1 millimeter, which is a little bit more than a 32nd of an inch, deviation from being perfectly straight. So fortunately, I am at a stage where I can actually correct this. So the plan for correcting it to get it as straight as possible is I'm going to glue these two pieces in. These go to the stern end. Get them all secured down. Then I will glue, once that's dry, I'm going to glue the bow piece in, being careful not to put any glue initially in between these two. I want that bow piece to dry perfectly flat. Then I'll be able to take a little tiny piece of wood, a little wedge, to push in here, straighten the keel out, and then I'll be able to glue some extra supports underneath where nobody inside of that thing is going to be able to see it. That will hold that shape. Then I can put some glue down into the crack, glue this piece to that piece, and then once the other decks and everything get put on and everything, it won't be noticeable, and there won't really be enough tension on the keel to cause any sort of problems. I probably don't really need to go to that extreme. Like I said, the whole amount that it's out is so small that it probably wouldn't matter. But since I noticed it, since it's something that's easy to correct at this point, may as well correct for it. So I'm going to go out end this right now here, get these things glued up, and I'll give you a report once the glue is dry and I'm starting to make the corrections. Okay, and we're back. As you can see, I've got these first decks all glued into place. I originally thought I might film putting the reinforcements in, but it really wasn't that much to it. As I flip this over, you can see it was just taking a couple pieces of wood, adding it in there. Typically why the front part was still not quite all the way cured, the glue, so there was a little bit of play still in it. But I did exactly what I said I would do. I put a little wedge right in this little part here, and I can tell that this gap, there's a gap that runs the whole length there. That was a little bit closer on this side than it was on the far side. So I was able to open that up, which tilted the bow a little bit, put some glue in there. Everything is now secure and dry. I've already double checked. I flipped it over, put a straight edge along the entire keel, and everything is perfectly straight and ready to go on to the next step.